The heavy hand clamped onto Sean McCarthy's shoulder just as he slid the bulky box of specialty pediatric nutrition shakes into his worn canvas tote. "I saw that, you thief." A polished, overly loud voice sneered, instantly silencing the busy checkout aisles of the upscale supermarket. Sean froze, taking a slow, measured breath. He was utterly exhausted. He had spent the last 8 hours tearing down drywall in his 7-year-old daughter's bedroom to fix a hidden mold issue. He was covered in white plaster dust, wearing a faded flannel shirt and scuffed work boots. His hands were full of organic fruit, allergy-safe snacks, and the large box of specialty shakes. He had simply placed the bulky box into his open bag to free a hand so he could reach for his wallet. He turned around to face a man in a pristine designer suit, holding a smartphone up, clearly recording the encounter. Behind the man stood the supermarket manager, a stern fellow named Marcus, looking equally disgusted. "I'm not stealing," Sean explained, keeping his voice steady despite the sudden adrenaline. "My hands are full. I'm reaching for my wallet to pay." "Save the lies," the man in the suit interrupted, stepping closer so his face perfectly framed the shot on his phone screen. "I'm Julian Vance. I see people like you all the time, desperate, taking what isn't yours. If you love stories about underdogs being humiliated but unexpectedly turning the tables, subscribe to the channel right now. We share a new story every day." Sean stared at the glowing lens of the phone. He hated public spectacles and had no desire to be part of one. He just wanted to pay for his daughter's groceries and go home. He pulled out his leather wallet, extracting his black corporate card. "Ring it up," Sean noted, handing the card toward Marcus. Marcus didn't take it. He crossed his arms, looking from Sean to Julian with a scoff. "I don't accept cards from shoplifters. That's probably a stolen card, too. I should just call the police right now." Julian raised his free hand, playing the benevolent savior for his invisible digital audience. "No need for the authorities. Marcus, this man is clearly struggling. Look at him. He's resorting to petty crime to provide for his child. I'll pay for it." "I don't need your charity," Sean warned, his tone dropping an octave to signal a firm boundary. "Process my card. Don't be proud," Julian patronized, tossing a premium credit card onto the counter. "Consider this a gift, but in exchange, you're going to come work off your moral debt at my facility tomorrow. Let's teach you the value of an honest living." Sean looked at the embroidered logo on Julian's lapel. Apex Innovations. A cold realization washed over him, and a quiet, dangerous calm settled deep in his chest. The flashing screen of Julian's phone felt like an interrogation spotlight, but Sean did not flinch. He observed the self-satisfied smirk on Julian's face and the sycophantic nodding of the supermarket manager. Marcus. Most men in Sean's position would have shouted, caused a scene, or begged for understanding. Sean did none of those things. He was a man who understood the complex geometry of power, and right now, arguing with an arrogant man holding a camera in a crowded store was a losing equation. "Take his ID, Marcus," Julian instructed, sliding his own platinum card into the payment terminal. "Make sure we know exactly who we are dealing with. I want him at my distribution center tomorrow at 600 a.m. sharp." Marcus eagerly snatched Sean's driver's license from the counter before Sean could slide it back into his wallet. He held it up, inspecting it like a piece of garbage. "Sean McCarthy, you better show up. Sean, if Mr. Vance tells me you skipped out, I'm handing this over to the precinct with the security footage of you stuffing those expensive items into your bag." Sean's eyes shifted from Marcus back to Julian. The name Apex Innovations echoed in his mind. Sean was the sole owner and CEO of McCarthy Global Supply, one of the largest logistics and hardware distributors on the coast. Apex Innovations was currently his company's most delinquent client, sitting on over $2 million in unpaid invoices for enterprise cooling servers. Julian was standing right in front of him, pretending to be a billionaire philanthropist for social media clout, all while defaulting on his massive corporate debts. "Fine," Sean answered, his voice completely devoid of emotion. "I'll be there tomorrow." "That's the spirit." Julian beamed, turning his phone back to his own face to address his followers. "See, guys. Sometimes a firm hand and a little generosity are all it takes to turn a life around. Stay tuned for tomorrow's update on our new project." Julian grabbed his receipt. Leaving Sean's ID abandoned on the counter, Sean quietly picked it up, along with the bag of groceries. He didn't offer a word of thanks. He didn't look back as he walked out the automated glass doors into the cool evening air. Sitting in the driver's seat of his understated sedan, Sean took out his phone. He didn't call a lawyer, and he didn't call the police. He simply opened his calendar and cleared his schedule for the next morning. If Julian Vance wanted a laborer, he was going to get one. At exactly 5:55 a.m. the next morning, Sean walked through the heavily tinted glass doors of Apex Innovations. He wore the same scuffed boots and faded work clothes from the day before. The upstairs lobby was a marvel of modern architecture, sleek marble floors, cascading water walls, and minimalist ambient lighting. It projected an image of limitless wealth and cutting-edge corporate success. But as a security guard escorted Sean to the freight elevator and pressed the button for the sub-basement, the grand illusion quickly faded. The doors opened to a damp, poorly ventilated concrete cavern. Exposed wires hung from unfinished ceiling grids, and the deafening roar of industrial fans echoed harshly off the walls. Julian was already there, but the charming, benevolent persona from the supermarket was entirely gone. He wasn't holding his phone. He stood with his arms crossed, glaring at a group of exhausted-looking workers who were trying to move massive server racks with outdated pallet jacks. "You're late," Julian barked as Sean approached the staging area. "I'm 5 minutes early," Sean replied calmly, scanning the chaotic room. "Down here, early is on time, and on time is late," Julian snapped, pointing toward a row of massive, heavy-duty cooling units still wrapped in thick industrial plastic. "You're going to uncrate those and move them into the server aisles. If you scratch a single panel, I'll deduct it from the minimum wage you're barely earning. Move." Sean didn't argue. He walked over to the crates, pulling a heavy utility knife from his pocket. As he sliced through the thick plastic wrapping, he carefully inspected the metal plating on the units. There, stamped just below the intake vents, were the unique serial numbers. He recognized the sequence instantly. Though they were the exact units McCarthy Global Supply had shipped to Apex 3 months ago. The ones Julian's accounting department claimed were lost in transit and continually refused to pay for. Julian was running a high-tech facility entirely on stolen, unpaid infrastructure, using coerced, cheap labor to install it. Sean spent the next 3 hours doing exactly what he was told. He lifted, he pushed, and he observed. He mentally noted the severe safety violations, the lack of proper ventilation, and the overworked staff who looked too afraid to speak up. He was gathering critical data, building an invisible fortress of evidence. He knew that when you intend to tear a man's empire down, you must first map every single weak point in its foundation. By mid-morning, the heat in the sub-basement had become absolutely stifling. Sean wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his flannel sleeve. Leaning against a concrete support pillar for a brief moment of rest, he watched as the other workers hurried around, heads down, terrified of making eye contact with the aggressive floor supervisors. A young woman with a clipboard and a deeply worried expression walked over to him. She wore a blue polo shirt with the Apex logo, but unlike the supervisors, her eyes held genuine concern. She handed Sean a cold bottle of water. "You need to drink this," she whispered, quickly glancing over her shoulder. "The ventilation down here has been broken for weeks. People pass out if they aren't careful." "Thank you," Sean noted, taking the bottle and twisting off the cap. "I'm Sean." "Elena," she replied quickly. "You're the new guy from the video, aren't you? The one Mr. Vance posted last night from the supermarket?" Sean nodded slowly. "I suppose I am." Elena let out a quiet sigh, stepping closer so her voice wouldn't carry over the relentless hum of the servers. "Listen to me, Sean. Don't sign the liability waiver they're going to push on you this afternoon. Julian uses those videos to trap people. He targets people who look desperate, pays off some minor debt, and forces them into signing predatory labor contracts to avoid being publicly shamed or reported." Sean took a slow sip of the water. "Processing the information. Is that how he built all this?" "Most of it," Elena admitted, her tone bitter. "He hasn't paid a vendor in months. Those cooling servers you're moving, the supplier has been threatening to lock them down, but Julian just ignores the emails. He thinks he's untouchable because of his internet followers. Just do your shift and walk away. Don't let him own you." "I appreciate the warning, Elena," Sean said, his voice steady and reassuring. He liked her. She had a moral compass in a building completely devoid of one. He pulled his phone from his pocket, opening a secure, encrypted application linked directly to his corporate database. He quickly typed in the serial numbers of the units he had just uncrated. The screen flashed red status, unpaid, delinquent. Elena looked at the complicated interface on his phone, thoroughly confused. "What are you doing?" "I'm just checking my schedule," Sean murmured, slipping the phone safely back into his pocket. He had seen enough. The reconnaissance phase was officially over. It was time to start closing the net. Around noon, the heavy steel doors of the subbasement swung open violently, and the atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Julian walked in, followed closely by a group of 5 men and women in immaculate business attire. They were venture capitalists, the vital financial lifeline Julian needed to keep his fraudulent empire afloat. Julian's demeanor flipped like a master switch. He was suddenly the charismatic visionary again, speaking loudly about innovation, corporate efficiency, and social responsibility. "And down here is the beating heart of our operation," Julian announced, gesturing broadly to the cramped, overheated room. "We don't just build technology. We build people. We offer second chances to those who have stumbled in life." Julian scanned the room and locked eyes with Sean. A cruel, performative smile touched his lips. He waved Sean over like a misbehaving dog. Sean wiped the grease from his hands with a cloth rag and walked over, his face completely unreadable. "This is Sean," Julian told the investors, placing a heavy, condescending hand on Sean's shoulder. "I found him yesterday, struggling, making some poor choices at a supermarket. I brought him here to give him honest work. It's about teaching responsibility and grit." One of the older investors, a woman with sharp, analytical eyes, looked past Sean to the massive cooling units. "These are impressive racks, Julian, but with this ambient temperature, aren't you risking a thermal overload? What's the BTU capacity on these units?" Julian blinked, his charismatic smile faltering for a fraction of a second. "Oh, the capacity is, well, it's more than enough. Absolutely state-of-the-art. They push 120,000 BTUs per unit," Sean answered calmly, looking directly at the investor without breaking eye contact. "But they require a minimum ambient clearance of 3 feet and active exhaust ventilation, neither of which are present here. If they run at full load in this specific layout, the thermal sensors will trip in under 48 hours, causing a complete catastrophic shutdown of your data servers." The silence in the room was absolute. The investors stared at Sean, stunned by the precise, authoritative technical breakdown coming from a dusty manual laborer. Julian's face flushed a deep, violent shade of red. He removed his hand from Sean's shoulder as if he had been burned. "Get back to the loading dock," Julian hissed through gritted teeth, dropping the friendly act. "Now." Sean didn't flinch. He simply nodded, turned around, and walked away. He didn't need to stay. He had already lit the fuse. Sean didn't go back to the loading dock as instructed. He walked straight through the heavy double doors leading to the rear alley, leaving the oppressive heat of the basement behind. The cool midday air felt refreshing against his face. He leaned against the brick wall of the building, reaching into his pocket and pulling out his phone. He bypassed his standard email application and opened a direct, encrypted messaging line to his executive team at McCarthy Global Supply. He didn't raise his voice to complain. He didn't throw a tantrum about being humiliated. He simply typed a few decisive commands that would permanently alter the course of Julian Vance's life. Message to Chief Financial Officer: execute immediate credit freeze on Apex Innovations. Reject all pending Net 30 terms. Send the formal default notice to their legal department. Message to Head of Operations: initiate remote lockout protocol on all leased cooling hardware at the Apex facility. Halt all incoming supply trucks currently en route to their locations. Message to Legal: draft a full repossession order for the Apex account based on breach of contract and severe safety violations. I want a removal team ready on standby. Abritsi ADTUIM distinct GNC GITOAPSG. Within 60 seconds, 3 distinct confirmations popped up on his screen. The gears of a billion-dollar supply chain shifted instantly at his command. He didn't need a lawyer to argue for him in court, and he didn't need the police to arrest Julian for his fake charity stunt. Sean controlled the financial oxygen to Julian's entire business, and he had just closed the valve tight. Elena stepped out into the alley, looking incredibly anxious. "Sean, what are you doing out here?" Julian is furious. "He's looking for you everywhere." He says he's going to call the cops and report you for the supermarket incident if you don't come back inside and apologize to the investors right now. Sean looked at her, his expression softening slightly. He admired her courage in stepping away from her job just to come warn him. Rio, you don't need to worry about Julian anymore. Elena, Sean explained quietly, putting his phone securely away. I'm leaving now, but I strongly suggest you don't come to work tomorrow. Take the day off. It's going to be a very bad day for this company. Before she could ask any more questions, Sean turned and walked down the alley, disappearing into the bustling city streets. He was done playing the victim. At 8:00 a.m. the following morning, the front lobby of Apex Innovations was in a state of absolute chaos. The sleek minimalist reception area echoed with the frantic sounds of ringing phones, panicked footsteps, and desperate shouting. Julian Vance was pacing furiously in front of the marble front desk. His expensive designer suit wrinkled, his hair wildly disheveled. The remote lockout had taken effect exactly at midnight. Every single cooling server in the sub-basement had powered down simultaneously. The thermal alarms were blaring, and the main data servers were moments away from an automatic emergency shutdown to prevent melting into slag. What do you mean we are locked out? Julian screamed at his head of it, who was trembling while holding a diagnostic tablet. The vendor, sir, the IT director stammered, swiping frantically on his screen. McCarthy Global Supply. They triggered a remote firmware lock. The screens just say account delinquent. I can't bypass it. The system is entirely bricked until they receive full payment. Julian's face was purple with rage. He turned and saw Elena walking into the lobby, having ignored Sean's advice to stay home simply because she desperately needed the paycheck. Julian immediately directed his blind panic toward her. Julian yelled, pointing a trembling finger at Elena. This is your fault. You were managing the floor yesterday. You let that homeless thief sabotage my equipment before he ran off. Didn't you? You're fired. I'm holding you personally liable for this destruction. Elena shrank back, terrified and deeply confused by the sudden aggression. Before she could speak, the automatic glass doors of the main entrance slid open with a soft hum. The morning light caught the sharp, tailored lines of a bespoke charcoal suit. Sean McCarthy walked into the lobby. The faded flannel and scuffed boots were gone. His posture was impeccably straight, his presence radiating quiet, undeniable authority. He carried a slim leather briefcase in one hand. The receptionist stopped typing. The IT director backed away. Julian froze mid-rant, staring at the man casually walking toward him. For a moment, Julian's brain couldn't reconcile the wealthy, powerful figure in front of him with the dusty laborer he had humiliated just 24 hours earlier. Step away from her, Julian, Sean warned, his voice low but carrying effortlessly across the silent room. Elena has nothing to do with your failures. Julian blinked repeatedly, desperately trying to process the shift in reality. His trademark arrogance quickly rushed back in to fill the terrifying void of his confusion. He let out a harsh, incredibly condescending laugh. What is this? Some kind of joke? Julian sneered, stepping aggressively toward Sean. Did you steal that suit? You have a lot of nerve showing your face here after skipping out on your debt. Security, grab this man right now. I'm having him arrested for corporate sabotage and trespassing. The two lobby security guards hesitated, clearly intimidated by Sean's unbothered stance and the sheer, quiet command he projected. They didn't move an inch. Sean didn't retreat. He calmly set his leather briefcase on the marble reception desk, popped the brass latches with a sharp click, and pulled out a thick stack of legal documents prominently stamped with a red corporate seal. No one is arresting anyone, Sean answered evenly. He slid the heavy stack of papers across the smooth marble toward Julian. These are the default notices, the breach of contract filings, and the immediate repossession orders. Julian looked down at the papers, his sneer faltering as his eyes focused on the bold print. He saw the logo of McCarthy Global Supply at the very top of the page. I don't understand, Julian muttered, looking from the papers back to Sean. What does McCarthy have to do with you? My name is Sean McCarthy, Sean stated, watching the color rapidly drain from Julian's face. I am the CEO and sole owner of the company you currently owe $2 million to. The cooling units you are holding hostage in your basement belong to me. The software running them belongs to me. You built this entire facade of wealth on my credit, Julian. and as of midnight, your line of credit is permanently closed." The lobby was dead silent. The IT director gasped quietly. Staring at his tablet, Elena stared at Sean, her eyes wide with shock and realization, suddenly remembering how he had checked the serial numbers on his phone the day before. Julian's hands began to shake violently as he picked up the papers. He scanned the signature at the bottom of the master contract and looked up at Sean's face. The reality hit him with the force of a physical blow. His charity case, the man he had mocked on camera for the world to see, was the exact man who held the keys to his entire empire. Blind panic finally broke completely through Julian's arrogant facade. The venture capitalists who had toured the basement the day before were scheduled to arrive in exactly 15 minutes to sign a massive funding agreement. If the servers were down and the hardware was actively being repossessed, his company was effectively dead in the water. "Sean, wait, let's be reasonable," Julian stammered, his voice cracking horribly. He tried to force a friendly smile, holding his hands up in a desperate, placating gesture. "This is just a misunderstanding. The supermarket, that was just for PR. You understand how the digital game is played. Let's go to my office. We can draft a partnership. I'll double your equity. Just turn the servers back on." Sean didn't smile. He didn't raise his voice to gloat. He simply stood his ground, an immovable wall of pure accountability. "There is no negotiation," Sean noted coldly. "Business requires absolute trust. You humiliate people for clicks. You trap vulnerable workers in unsafe conditions. You operate entirely on fraud. I don't partner with liabilities." "You can't do this," Julian shouted, raw desperation making him frantic. "I'll ruin you. I have millions of followers. I'll tell everyone you attacked me." Sean simply checked his expensive watch. "You can try, but right now, you have a much more immediate problem." Right on cue. The heavy rumble of diesel engines vibrated through the lobby floor. Through the glass walls, everyone watched as 3 massive McCarthy Global Supply transport trucks backed aggressively into the facility's loading docks. Dozens of men in high-visibility vests jumped out, carrying heavy moving equipment. "They are here to retrieve my property," Sean explained. "If you or anyone in this building interferes with the repossession, my legal team will file criminal charges for grand larceny by noon." At that exact moment, the elevator doors pinged, and the group of venture capitalists stepped into the lobby. They stopped dead, taking in the scene, Julian sweating and panicking, moving trucks outside, and Sean McCarthy standing calmly at the center of it all. One of the investors recognized Sean immediately. "Mr. McCarthy, what exactly is going on here?" "Just a routine repossession," Sean replied politely. "Apex Innovations has defaulted. I suggest you hold on to your capital." Julian watched in horror as the investors turned their backs on him and walked straight out the door. His empire was crumbling in real time, undone completely by the man he had tried to step on. By late afternoon, the Apex Innovations facility was entirely gutted. Every piece of unpaid machinery, every leased server, and every cooling unit had been professionally dismantled and loaded into the McCarthy trucks. Julian sat alone on the floor of his empty lobby, his phone buzzing endlessly with incoming calls from angry creditors and canceled sponsors. There was no viral video that could save him from total financial ruin. Sean stood by his car in the parking lot, signing off on the final inventory manifests. He handed the clipboard back to his operations manager, feeling a deep, profound sense of relief. He hadn't just recovered his assets, he had successfully dismantled a predatory trap. He saw Elena walking slowly out of the building, carrying a small cardboard box filled with her desk items. She looked exhausted, but the fear was completely gone from her eyes. Sean walked over to her. "I told you to take the day off." Elena managed a small, genuine smile. "I guess I have every day off now. Though, honestly, I'm just glad it's over." Sean reached into his suit jacket and handed her a crisp, white business card. "My regional office is 3 miles from here. We need a floor manager who actually cares about the safety of the staff. The starting salary is double what Julian was paying you, with full medical benefits. Call that number tomorrow morning." Elena looked down at the card, tears rapidly welling up in her eyes. "Thank you, Sean. Really?" "Don't thank me," Sean reminded her gently. "You handed water to a stranger and tried to protect him. You earned it." An hour later, Sean unlocked the front door of his quiet suburban home. He hung his suit jacket over a chair and walked into the living room. His daughter was sitting on the couch, watching a cartoon. He smiled, pulling the bulky box of specialty nutrition shakes from the grocery bag and setting it gently on the table. He didn't need the world to know he was powerful. He didn't need a camera to validate his worth. He knew exactly who he was, and his boundaries were firmly unshakable. He sat down next to his daughter, wrapping an arm securely around her, finally enjoying the peace he had protected. If you enjoyed this story about an underdog who refused to be a victim and turned the tables with pure class, subscribe now. We bring you a brand new, satisfying story every single day. How would you have handled Julian if you were in Sean's shoes? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching until the end, and we will see you next time.